Welcome to Brewed in Monmouth, the real estate tea with Kate and Doreen. We're here to talk homes, hometown gems, and real conversations with the entrepreneurs and locals who keep Monmouth County buzzing. I'm Kate, and as always,
I'm Doreen. Each week, we're bringing you the voices behind the businesses, the stories behind the sales, and the tea you need to hear. So grab your favorite drink, and let's get into it.
We're so excited to have Andy Krantz of Zager Fuchs with us today. Andy has been a very well-known real estate attorney in Monmouth County for a long time now. And
Thanks.
We have had some changes in New Jersey the last couple of years that affect real estate. Most recently, I don't know the official name, but it is the mansion tax for the lay people. Andy's here to talk a little bit about that and other things that can affect your home.
No, thank you. Thanks both for having me here. I'm really excited.
So excited
you guys,
to be here. It's truly an honor.
You guys are appreciate you. You guys look like you have a lot of fun when you're doing this.
Well, let's keep it fun.
Let's keep it fun. All right. Well, so I don't know how fun this is though, but so, we're talking about the fees that people have to sell when they, pay when they sell property here in New Jersey. And, in New Jersey, it's becoming, we know it's an expensive state. We know how expensive it is, but it's gotten even worse just in the past month and a half. So for years, we had what's called the Realty transfer tax. So anytime people don't realize, every time they sell property here in New Jersey, they pay a fee to the state of New Jersey, no matter what the sale price is. So that's been around for generations. And like I had found out, like over the years, that they used to fund wars with those realty transfer taxes. They didn't call it that then. It was like the stamps.
And that's about 1%, right? A little bit under 1%.
The realty transfer tax is a little bit around 1%, correct. So, it starts off, it's a graduated formula, so it starts off lower. So under $350,000, it's pretty small. But then the first step up is like $350,000, and then it goes up again at like $600,000, and then and then it maxes out, and it's a multi-leveled formula. So I used to be able to figure it out and add it together, because when I first started doing this in the 90s, it was $3.50 per thousand for the first 150,000 and $5 per thousand for each thousand thereafter.
Wow.
Easy formula.
Yep.
Well, then then they changed it, and then I needed a book like this to figure out that takes you up to $2 million what the realty transfer tax would be. But, this went into effect in 2004.
And it's not only just the price of the house.
Right.
It's also the age of the seller.
Correct. Right. So,
and if they're a veteran or disabled or something like that,
they get a reduction in the realty transfer tax. So that's cutting half. So if you're
over the age of 62.
Over 62, you're paying almost half of what somebody else would pay. But I usually tell people, if you're selling a house for around $1 million, it's around 1%. So it's around $10,000. Okay. So it's a little bit more. And somebody who's over 62 was probably paying $5,600. But then back in 2004, we all know the famous mansion tax that went into effect, which was first just against houses. Okay. And that's what it was, just your residential homes was the initial action that the state put
purchase.
on the
so
purchaser.
anything over $1 million.
Anything over $1 million. Once you hit $1 million, okay, you went from $1. It was actually $1.01 million or $1 million and a penny. Okay.
Yeah.
The buyer would have to pay 1% of the purchase price. So that's what it had been since 2004, that buyers were paying this mansion tax.
Right, that's when there was a spike in the $999 homes.
Right, exactly. We got capped out.
Yeah,
we used to say that, and people would try to figure out ways to get around it, and I'm like, listen,
that's called tax fraud.
Exactly.
Call
I'm
somebody
not
else.
in the middle of tax fraud. You want to do it? They said I could do this. No, I mean, and back then we were even reluctant to try to maybe move a realtor's commission over to the buyer's side to try to save it, because the statute and the form that you would have to fill out for the state would say that it's all consideration customarily paid by the seller. So even back then, it would say, okay, you're trying to avoid it because I can move the commission over to the seller to the buyer's side from the seller side, but commissions had always been paid by the seller. Okay. So we couldn't play with it then.
There's no reason to risk my license to save somebody a couple of bucks,
That's exactly
Call
what you
another
want.
agent.
And back then we would say, if you can afford to buy a house for $1 million, you know what? $10,000 you should be able to pay.
A $1 million home in 2004 is totally different than $1 million home today.
That's exactly
the big
right.
change, right.
That's the big change. So, I mean, we've seen prices obviously grow dramatically over the years.
Yeah, just the average price point for a home in New Jersey has, up 3 times what it used to be.
Exactly. I mean, most homes I see are probably at least $800,000.
Yeah, I think the average price is close to 6.
Yeah,
It's
right. So, then it's different. That's not these are people who are just starting out sometimes, or pretty close to it, that are paying over $1 million, and then they have to cough up 10 grand.
Right.
So that was a lot. And when there was the change last year with the realtors commissions, that was an opportunity. I saw it as saying, okay, well, listen, now we can possibly, if you're in that $1 million mark, move the commission that would normally be over to the seller side to the buyer side. And now we could bring it below $1 million, and the state couldn't say anything, because now the rules have changed. So here was a way finally for us to possibly figure out a way that we can get around having to pay the mansion tax to the state. Well, this actually, I think in February, they were talking about increasing the mansion tax, and that was the first time we heard anything about it, that the state wanted to close up their shortfall, or I've heard leave a surplus is part of the goal. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know. But I knew that they were talking about increasing the mansion tax to like 2% or 3% or whatever it was.
I had
over
heard
a certain
at one
dollar
point
amount.
it was going to be a 5% tax.
That's what it is in New York.
It's
5%, but over $5 million.
Right. Yeah.
And California too is crazy high.
Yeah, and some states have like New York, I thought it's like over. I read somewhere like 29 million. Is when they really get to like 3.9% or something like that. Well, here in New Jersey, we decided everything was quiet. We knew that they were considering doing this mansion tax, and then I was away at a wedding in California, and I come back end of June. That Monday after the last weekend in June, and I get a call from another lawyer that I work with, and she says, "What are you going to do about the change in the mansion tax?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "It's switching from the buyer to the seller." I said, "What?" I said, "Who decided that?"
Seems so arbitrary.
So arbitrary.
And like even having the amounts that they have, like, okay, fine, right? But to switch it from the buy side to the sell side completely blinded all these sellers.
Blindsided everybody.
And it's just a moment in time. Like right now you might say, well, they're the ones making all the money because, yes, it is a seller's market here still. It's not always going to be a seller's market.
Not always, no. And, I mean, Kate and I were involved in a deal that we had been talking about it, that had been coming up, that they had anticipated or thought this might be happening, but they were expecting it to not go into effect till October. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this passes behind closed doors
on a Friday night.
That weekend, switches over to the seller. And nobody knew anything about it, and it goes into effect July 10th.
10
it was
days
crazy
to figure
too,
it all
because
out.
the Associated Press was saying that it was going to. They had reported a totally different story that Thursday. So I said, no, it's not going to be that bad. It's not going to go into effect till November for this one particular deal we have. What's the big deal?
Right.
And my seller was gracious about it. He wasn't upset, but I was like, he's going to be mad at me. I heard nothing that the seller was changing it. It was just a midnight deal.
Totally midnight deal. Blindsided everybody.
And I've read things like, the title reports, like, they're like, nobody consulted with the title industry to ask their opinions on how this should be handled. I'm going to tell you how I think this could have been done. Okay.
Andy for governor.
Well, no, thank you. But it would have been a simple fix. Okay. Not like what they ended up doing. Okay. So right now, as we know, and just so people are aware, at $1 million, the seller pays the realty transfer tax, plus they pay now what's called the graduated percentage fee. Okay, so, and that went into effect on July 10th. So any of our deals after July 10th, any contracts that are written after July 10th are now subject to this new rule. Okay, but then over once you hit $2 million, it's 2%.
Mm-hmm.
And we know it goes at $3.5 million, it caps out at 3.5% of the purchase price.
Right.
So
So the new rule, just for our listeners, is the amount, the percentage that it is between the 1 and the 2 and the 3.5 or 3, the whole thing. And more importantly, that it went from the buy side to the sell side.
Correct.
That the responsibility or the burden, however you want to word it, is on the seller.
Yep, 100% of it is now on the seller.
To the seller.
Right, and so obviously we know that, at $1 million now we have this $10,000 now extra due from a seller.
Right.
Okay, and so they're now paying all these extra fees,
Right.
which they didn't plan on.
Right.
And one of the things you're thinking about is how about all those people who sign contracts? So new construction.
Mm-hmm.
New construction, think about all these people who are in business doing new construction who sign contracts that takes 2 years to build a property. And they've now signed a deal for over $1.5 million or whatever else.
Yep.
Or actually it's probably the $2 million that's going to impact them more, where they now have to pay additional fees to the state of New Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay, that they didn't expect. And in some cases, in my opinion, that's discouraging construction in the state. Yeah.
Especially on top of the COA fees, whether you love them or hate them. I mean, the builders
Exactly.
also have that large fee
Yep.
in most of the towns in Monmouth County as well.
Yeah.
It's a lot on.
This didn't incentivize sellers to want to sell their house and move up or down, depending
Right.
what their life
No.
story was.
No, and we were already having a tough enough time to
We
get sellers
having
to.
horrible time. Yes,
Right.
it's the worst it's ever been in a very
Right.
long time. Inventory is just such a
Continues
low.
to remain low, right?
Andy, is there any kind of tax if you leave the state of New Jersey on top? If you sell your property and move to Florida?
No, that's a misnomer.
Okay.
Okay. So back then, I think it could have been around the same time we got the exit tax, the so-called exit tax,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really called the New Jersey non-resident withholding tax. Okay, and it's not a tax; it's just withholding the money from the seller in case they're not a New Jersey resident. So if you're not a New Jersey resident at the time of the sale of a property, the state just wants to make sure they're getting their money on the gain on the sale.
Mm-hmm.
So they came up with a shortcut to figure out, okay, so we're just going to hold back 2% of the sale price at the time of the closing. So at least we get something paid towards this person's tax obligation to the state. But if you're a New Jersey resident at the time of the sale, it's your primary residence, then you're exempt. And there are other conditions that you can be exempt from paying it, even if you're no longer a resident. Even if you sold your home, but it was your principal residence for 2 of the past 5 years, then you may still be able to be exempt from having the withholding, even if you have changed your residency already.
Okay.
But
So-
what if you've lived here, you're in this house for, we'll call it 10 years. You sold it, and now your permanent residency is going to be in Florida.
Well, you sold it, but your permanent residency, as long as I usually tell people don't change your residency from New Jersey to the other state until after you sold this property. Okay? Just wait. You've been here for all these years. There's no reason. Don't get your new driver's license until you know for certain that you've sold your house and you've closed.
Yeah.
Okay?
Makes
That just makes it easier. Then you don't have to worry about it. But if you've already changed your residency, then if you meet those exemptions, those certain exemptions that the state allows, which is one of the things, like it being you're not paying tax on the gain because it's less than $500,000, because everyone gets $250,000 per person every 2 years that they own their primary residence. So you can sell your primary residence every 2 years. You live there for 2 years. You don't pay. You have a $250,000 gain exemption for a single person, $500,000 for a married couple. So, but with the realty transfer tax of the graduated percentage fee, we do have a lot of people that are going to have to be paying those fees that didn't expect to pay it. And I told Kate earlier that I actually filed one for a client. So anyone who had signed a contract before July 10th, and had entered into a contract before July 10th, but the closing happened after July 10th, the sellers had to pay that increase had to pay that graduated percentage fee.
Right, if it was $2 million or more.
$2 million or more.
Right.
So if it's $2 million or more, the seller had to pay that fee. And I actually had a closing happen a couple weeks ago, and we got the form finally from the state. We filled it out for the client, and we submitted it for that client. And they got an email just today saying their $122,000 refund is in process.
Wow. So it
within a
does
few
work.
weeks.
Good.
And it can be filed by fax, by email. It doesn't just have to be mailed in, but there are limitations as to how long you can wait to send in that refund request.
Which any seller who has to pay the additional 1.5, 2, whatever it might be based on the price of the house, on top of the 1% that they would have been paying, has to file this form with their lawyer, basically the day of closing.
Well, no, they can't. The problem is they can't file it right away.
Because the deed has to be
recorded. The deed has to be recorded, and we have to put the recording information on that form. Okay. So you got to wait. And what's crazy is we don't have that control over the recording. No. It's the buyer's side the buyer's title company that has control over it.
Yeah,
so now the seller is waiting for the buyer's title company to record something, and it's out of our hands. So you're depending on somebody that you have no control over to get your refund.
So like on November 1st, because the deadline's November 15th, the title has to be filed by November 15th. Are people going to start walking it down to the county? Like, how is it going to?
I would think they're going to start walking it down to the county.
There's going to be a line outside Freehold.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, how many deals are really at that level?
That's true.
That are going to be entitled to that refund? Because think about it. It's only those contracts that were signed prior to July 9th. Or July 10th.
That are $2 million or more.
That are $2 million or more. The buyers were paying, still owe that. We're telling all the buyers that signed the contracts prior to the change in the law that 1% is still on you.
Right.
I mean, otherwise, if you tried to fight that, a seller could say, "Listen, we didn't have meeting of the minds then. I'm not going to sell you my house now."
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's been the argument. And so far, nobody has really tried to push that envelope.
Me either. Yeah.
They're all accepting the fact, the buyers are all accepting that the 1% is still on them because that was what they expected when they signed it. Mm-hmm. Okay. Since July 10th, no. Now we can negotiate. Some sellers are saying we're trying to negotiate, but I think it's getting added into the purchase price.
Yeah.
Or,
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think in new construction, it's really going to get added to the purchase price. And new construction now is so sky high anyway. It's really going to be interesting what happens.
Yeah, no. I mean, I asked a big builder, like, what are you going to do with all these, someone who's developing in Long Branch? Mm-hmm. And he said, I'm eating it right now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what he said. For especially the pre-existing contracts. Building's almost sold out, and it's not going to be ready till 2027.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do?
Wow.
The 1% I think is still the buyer. You expect the buyer to still pay the 1%, and then anything above that is going to be the seller's going to have to eat that.
Are you seeing buyers pick up compensation for agents now because of the extra fees of the seller?
You mean being transferred to the buyer's side?
Yeah.
Not that frequently.
I think it might come because there's now such a burden on the seller.
Yep. I hear you.
Just to even the playing field a bit.
Totally. I think they're going to ask. They're going to say, why don't you push that over to the seller side, or just split it with us?
Yeah.
We're trying that when this first happened, we tried to put that in our review letters. And actually, I was putting it in my retainer letter to the clients. Mm-hmm. We'll try to see what we can do if we can get the seller to the buyer to pick up split it with you or something like that. But
that's a great thing about Andy. He's not looking for a fight. He's a peacemaker, deal maker.
Which is that's the art of your deal.
No,
right. It really is, because you can't come in really, really strong, and you have to be willing to discuss it and negotiate it.
Right,
that's what we're hired to do.
100%.
Us, you, because there's always so many different. There's a lot of different ways that you can make something work. And you just have to be open-minded to it. And when like you were saying, like the sellers who were saying, no, we're not going to do it and we're going to cancel the deal. Well, like the joke's kind of on them then, because now they're putting the house back on the market, and guess what?
Right.
It's automatically on them. So instead of trying to negotiate it with that buyer that they had in hand at the moment, they sort of, shot themselves in the foot, because now they're going to sit with the house. And we all know there's plenty of sellers out there that don't need to sell. Mm-hmm. But they eventually will, want to sell again. And now it's 100% on them.
And what are we often taught? Your first offer and your first deal is your best offer, your best deal.
Yeah.
No matter what you think, we all learn that. And that's why
because it just proves itself over and over and over again.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. And I've always tried to counsel my sellers, especially if you have a buyer that wants to get out of the deal. No matter what we try to do, I mean, contracts are contracts, and yes, but you have to be realistic. And if a buyer's gonna try to get out of a deal, they're going to try every which way to get out of a deal. If they don't get out, if they're unhappy with the inspections, but you keep them in, they're next thing you know, they have a mortgage denial, and you have to then prove that wasn't real. So,
how many times do you actually see a deposit get litigated over? I mean,
very rarely.
Yeah,
very rarely. I don't think in my career. I think twice in 25 years. I know of one client going over litigation for a deal that fell apart. One of my clients is currently in litigation. I'm not handling it because I don't do litigation, but he's suing the buyer who just walked away from the deal. And I have one other deal right now with the deposit that I'm sitting on. That my client is adamant that the buyer didn't rightfully cancel the contract over inspection issues.
It's really hard because it's their point of view, it's their perspective, and it's very, very hard to sometimes get them to see the bigger picture. And all that negativity and just forcing somebody to do something, you learn it with your 2-year-old. You can't force them to do something. You're just going to be miserable. Right. Yeah. So it's like, why? Sometimes it's easy to just let it go and move on to something else. I
totally hear that. I agree with that. But sometimes it also seems like the contracts, are they really worth the paper they're written on sometimes? Because they...
the deposit. It's like, why do we even give a deposit then? To show intent?
Yeah.
Right. But no, a deposit also does give some incentive because... To
stay in the game.
Yes, because, in this, I have this client who believes he's right, and he's not agreeing to release a deposit. And it's a significant deposit. And that's his right.
Sure.
It is absolutely his right to say that. And if he wants to choose to go to court over it, then he'll go over to court. But it just sits in my trust account unless the buyer side decides to pursue it.
Yes.
So now
so you do. You have a game of. Got it.
So because this really doesn't happen, is that seller allowed to put the house back on the market, or is he still in a binding contract?
The seller is permitted to put that back on the market because
even while they're going through this litigation.
Right.
Okay.
Once the contract's terminated, the seller can relist it and try to sell it and enter into contract.
And it can be terminated
to determine their damage, the extent of their damages.
Yeah.
Right. That's normally how it works in New Jersey, where you don't automatically get the deposit.
Right.
We typically hold on to the deposit. The seller relists the property for sale, and then when they quantify their damages, they may then say, "Okay, we're willing to settle for you rather than you paying all these legal fees and we're paying all these legal fees."
Right.
We'll agree to accept this amount of money for it. But more often than not, I've seen my sellers willing to release a deposit for something. Where buyers say, okay, it's worth it for me to pay something so at least the seller will release me from the deal.
Just to get out.
And move on.
Yeah.
People don't like doing that.
No, of course not.
But,
right.
Sometimes it's peace of mind at night. And that's what, I try to tell people. And part of our deal or what we're supposed to be doing is helping the clients get the property they want. Okay. But when they don't want it, then that's also their right.
On the sales side, it's tough though.
Yeah.
Because I feel, I've only been doing this for 5 years, but you vet the buyers. You can't really vet them that well. I mean, a few things you can do. That weekend or 2 weekends in the market that I've been working in where you're marketing the house is when the seller's really in the driver's seat. And then after that, they lose pretty much all control.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, yeah.
Unfortunately in the state. So it's, I feel bad for them when it falls apart like that.
Yeah.
Or just when it gets difficult, when, you're not getting the response from the attorney on the other side or the title company on the other side. Or, we just had where it took us over a month to get inspection issues, discussed, not even resolved, just acknowledged. So, you're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and you just can't force somebody to do something. It gets very, very difficult.
I'm just wondering, you talk about inspections. When did sewers scoping
that happened overnight.
become the buzzword? You know,
that happened overnight.
I mean, for years it was mold.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I first started, no one heard of mold. Not that it didn't exist, but but no one, very few people did mold testing. And then we moved. It was radon. Radon was the buzzword,
Right.
and then mold became the buzzword for EFIS. We had for a number of years, with stucco siding.
Yeah.
And those were issues, and which still could be. But now everyone does sewer
scopes. Yep.
I really feel like it happened overnight. I was selling my really good friend's house in Lincroft, and I heard this crazy racket in the basement. I was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, it's a sewer scope." That was the first one. It was like, wait, 15, maybe 16 months ago. And he was literally sawing off the sewer cap.
Because they don't come off very easily. So the first one I had was quite a few years ago, and I was like, "What?" Like I didn't even know what they were talking about either. And then the buyer was from California, and I was like, "Oh, I guess earthquakes, things can move around. I don't know." So it made sense in my head. I stood there though, and I watched him, run that camera through the sewer line all the way out to the curb and everything. I was like, "Wow!" And I'm like, "Okay, fine. It's like a septic inspection,
Yeah.
And then it kind of died off for a little bit, but now. It's all the time. If it's not septic, it's a sewer. You have your oil tank sweep.
Yep.
You have your
Must do
radon.
that.
You have mold or air quality. You may have a pool. You have radon.
Chimney.
Chimney's getting huge.
Chimney is, and even the towns. Sometimes the towns would require
the chimney caps.
to
have them cleaned out
for the chimneys. Like what? But the other towns don't.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Right.
Why? There's no uniformity around here. It just makes it very hard to go from town to town. Maybe there should be some sort of standard or no standard at all.
Some standard would be really nice.
Right, exactly.
Standard would be nice. Like Tom's River, I think, has like 5 or 6 required inspections that you have to go through with the town. Like the chimney would be one. I forget what the other ones are. And I'm like, wow, if we're doing all that with the town, what does the buyer need to spend X amount of money on for a home inspection? Because it's pretty much the same thing.
Because of all these other things.
Well, I had a client who relied upon that with the septic tank in Tom's River, and he ended up having it was just a regular. It wasn't anything intense. He assumed it was, which we told him you shouldn't assume that. And it turned. After we closed, he's like, my septic's backing up into my house, and I'm having all these problems. And I said, did you do the septic inspection that we told you to do? He said, no, I relied on the septic inspection that the septic certification that the seller provided to the town. You can't do that.
No.
It's not the same.
No, it's not the same. Exactly. It's a different standard of what somebody's going to be looking at.
Right.
So it's.
I do believe that there's an expert, like everybody has a little, field of expertise, right? And what a septic inspector does is different than what the oil tank guy is going to do. So sometimes you get these home inspectors and they do everything, even the termites, right? For wood destroying insects. You gotta, like, the more you see, the more you do of something, the better you are at noticing certain things. And nobody's eyes can pick up everything.
No.
So I do like having like individual experts covering their field, but it does get to the point where
no, and it can be expensive.
It's
really
very
expensive, and people often they get the home inspections done and they see the results of the home inspection report, and they don't want to do the rest of their inspections. But technically, they're supposed to do all of them during the inspection period, not hold off on doing that. But sometimes people are like, well, look, I want to see what the seller's going to do if they're going to do these other things before I spend any money on a tank sweep or on these other things, because it's just money down the drain.
Or a structural engineer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's an expensive one.
Yeah, most buyers don't want to pay for a structural engineer.
Yeah.
Usually it ends up trying to get onto the seller's lap, but the seller can say, the inspector, I don't agree with the inspector, and I'm not going to do it. You want the house, you got to do it.
So that's kind of interesting. Like, listen, we all want to protect our buyers, and we want our buyers to buy a very safe house, right?
100%.
No house is perfect. So with, some knowledge and a little bit of like reason, just make it so that you're safe in it, right? what kills me is when a seller is, I don't want to use the word force, but when a seller agrees to give, let's just call it a $35,000 credit for a new septic that the buyer is screaming about that they need to have done right away. And then they get it, we close on the house, a month goes by, 2 months go by, a year goes by, and you keep going past the same house and you're like, they never did that septic, and they never replaced the septic. Like, where's the $35,000? Would you go to Aruba? Like, what'd you do with the money that you? At that point, you literally, I feel like you stole it from the seller, right? So I would love if something like that could be held like an escrow, where it's built into the agreement that, okay, you need a brand new septic, we'll give you the $35,000 or whatever the number is, but you have 2 months after closing to do it, and if you don't do it by then, we get the money back. You know what I'm saying? Like, it shouldn't just be payday for buyers sometimes.
Let's do that on your next deal.
I'm just saying, like, it's hard because
I love holding escrow.
So does the title company. It's like hot potato between the lawyer and the title company.
I mean, for us, it's an additional burden that we frequently, as attorneys, we don't get paid for.
You have to take on. Nope.
And then, but we have people emailing us or contacting us constantly. Can you release this escrow? Will you release this escrow to us or whatever?
Well, the UNOs are so tricky.
And so I have seen some attorneys charging for the extra for doing the escrows. They'll charge for the escrow agreement and to continue to hold the money. And
I've seen that too.
I think our jobs and our responsibilities have gotten much more complicated.
Yeah.
And burdensome in a way over time that it really it kills me to know that a seller gave up X amount of money to a buyer. I'm just going to stick with the septic situation, and they never did anything with it. How is that fair? It's just so wrong. And yes, we could talk about karma and all that other stuff, but there should be a way that we can protect the seller from having to do that. And just let it be like free money then for the seller to do, for the buyer to do whatever they want with it.
That's why I often prefer when I'm asking for repairs, for inspections for a buyer, I'm just gonna lump it together as in lieu of all repairs. I'm not gonna say it's for a specific thing. I'm gonna ask for the whole thing, for everything.
Right.
And just say, okay, yeah, maybe it is for one specific thing, but there's other things. And let's group it together and not break it out line by line. But you're right. I had a client who got a big credit for, I represented the seller, but it was another attorney that I knew who was buying the house and got a big credit for stucco siding. And that client, that person never replaced the siding.
Never replaced the siding.
Never did anything about it.
It just kills you, right?
So, but that client, that seller moved out of state, and so I don't think he
knows. But I know. I'm just saying it's kind of hard. We do our best to represent the clients on whichever side we're on, but just kind of like keep it fair for everything, because the burdens on both the sell side and the buy side has gotten much larger, especially with the changes that you came on to talk to us about. And you just want, to keep the open communication, and I don't know if fairness is the right word to use, but
the one thing Andy doesn't get to do is he doesn't go to the inspections and meet the inspector, because there's a lot of great inspectors out there. But sometimes you get some guy, and I'm like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't know how to build a house, but you certainly don't either. Right. And this buyer is hanging on every word this person says. Right. In fact, our home inspection, when you were my agent, do you remember I laughed at him? I was like, I didn't really know him that well. I was like, what do you mean? So the soil's going up by the post on the deck, and you think it's like a huge problem? And he was like, oh yeah, it's a big problem. I'll get a shovel.
And I could tell you who it was too, and he has a thumbs down in my phone because he's making a mountain out of a molehill.
Yes.
Yeah, and some people really get scared. They really trust these people. They think they're like the experts.
Right.
They had cement supports under the cement footings and everything, so your mulch was like a little too high. Like, people make big deals out of things that aren't big deals,
and because there's such a burden on us.
No.
I don't a lot of times want to correct them. Something like that I would. I'd go out on them and be like, well, what if you just pat the mulch down? But sometimes I know that what they're saying is kind of a big deal, but you're kind of scared to say anything.
Well, they're like everybody else. They're afraid of getting sued.
Right.
Yeah.
That's their biggest fear.
That's their biggest fear.
And I sometimes feel like they put that ahead of their clients.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, and sometimes I think they're part of what they need to do in the inspection reports is make it clear these are recommendations for you to do. not when like improvements, like they should be spelled out differently.
Yeah.
These are things that they're not defects. These are things that are recommended that you do.
Right.
General maintenance or things that should be done, but it's not something that is making this house structurally unsound.
Yeah.
Or mechanically you're going to have an issue.
Right.
Yeah, it would be better to have that.
Right.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want that?
Because think of where we live too, right? Monmouth County. Nobody's houses are falling down. Nobody's living in a house full of mold and horrible air quality with their kids. Not the most people. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I know there might be a few exceptions out there, but for the most of the houses that we're selling and we're walking in, they're safe. They're not going to fall down. And if the seller didn't sell for 10 years, they'd be fine, But it's a very hard balancing act.
Very hard.
Protecting both sides. Especially because like what you were talking about initially when you came on, there's a lot of money at stake.
Yeah.
And it's regardless of the price of your house or the age that you are, for you in that transaction, it's a lot of money. And, you just want to help everybody protect their investment.
Exactly. And you want to see people walk away with as much as possible. Sometimes they may need it for their care or for whatever else in the future.
Right.
That, and that's why I think just judging the fact that something's over $1 million does not, you have no idea what that person is ultimately walking away with.
Yeah.
Right.
They could have taken a reverse mortgage and using that to pay for their care, and now they got to pay all this extra money to the state because of that.
They could be $10,000 or $20,000 closer to a short sale.
Right.
You don't know.
You don't know.
And I know
for the state to assume that this was just the sellers are walking away with so much money, or that we want to get the people who are moving out of state. Most of the people aren't leaving the state. Right.
And
most of the people I deal with are staying here.
The money that they're collecting from this new tax increase is going to the general fund.
Right.
I know.
It's not even going to help housing
Infrastructure, which we desperately need.
infrastructure,
Right. Exactly.
new developments, incentives on land sales. I don't know, something, to help buyers find more inventory.
Another thing, also
development. We need more. Yeah. We need encouraging development, not discouraging it.
Totally.
Right.
And to this point too, when you're downsizing, it does, for a lot of people, it doesn't even make sense to downsize because your downsize house now, the delta is slim.
Right.
Everything's around $1 million. You have a dated house that you haven't done a lot to, you get $1 million for it, but then you want to go to a 55 and older that's a little bit more contemporary, you're maybe paying $850 for it. So, and then with all the fees,
it just doesn't pay. I know.
No.
Yeah.
I know. It makes it really, really hard. I mean, the people who are really maybe, comfortable are those that have a second home.
Right.
And they can sell what they're sitting on, cash in on all their equity and whatnot, go sit until the market, flips or changes. I don't know. We can talk about what we think or don't think is going to happen in September. I don't know,
I don't know
if rates are going to get better or not. We won't know until they do or they don't.
I don't think. I honestly don't think we're seeing a rate change.
I tend to agree with you.
I think the signals from what we're seeing, with the increase a bit in inflation and with tariffs and everything like that, I just don't think.
And not motivated.
I don't see the Fed being motivated to do that. But I don't see it hurting the market, at least in Monmouth County. The number of transactions I'm doing, seeing this summer has been quite significant. I didn't see a drop off this year. 2 years ago when the rates went up and we saw a big drop off. But it seemed like it rebounded especially around here.
The only thing that's making business hard is that there's no inventory.
Right.
Like you have so many I could be walking through the same house with 4 or 5 different buyers.
Which I hate doing too.
Yeah.
It's a little embarrassing, I know, when you're, with whatever. I just wish that we can find a way to get more encouraging inventory.
Yeah.
Out there for people.
Oh.
They need
So let's tax everybody.
Yeah, there we go. That helps. Right?
We have a very, very wealthy, educated generation looking to buy homes, and we're not helping them find a way to do it.
No, but we tacked on now a 4.5%, up to 4.5% on our sellers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
So
It hurts.
who aren't now encouraged to sell.
No.
Because Well, why don't we wait and see? Maybe they'll change on the next if there's a change in administration. Who
I
knows?
don't know. I feel like they never give taxes back.
You
That's
never
just
get it
me.
back. No,
Yeah.
I think you're right. Well, like I said, the mansion tax has been around since 2004.
Yeah.
Okay, 21 years of it. Oh, so this is how I would have fixed it. All right.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I said, so it would have been so simple. Okay, they could have kept the mansion tax. Our buyers got used to paying the mansion tax, and so keep the 1%. You want to, maybe they could have increased it. It would have been nice if they made it started at $1.5 million.
Okay.
That would have been a nice solution
Yeah.
for the buyers because, like we said, $1 million is not the same as it was in 2004. But all they had to do was keep the mansion tax and change the table for the realty transfer tax and increase over $2 million, not even call it a graduated percentage fee. Just change the old realty transfer tax table.
On the seller side.
On the seller side. Okay? Would have kept everything the way it was on the buyer side for the 1%, and then just changed it. We wouldn't have this extra additional tax. It probably wouldn't have been as upsetting to people. Because if you explain to people that they hadn't changed the rates since 2020 to 2004, people might understand we see increases in on the tolls and everything else gets bumped up. They could have just changed the table.
Over 20 years, yeah.
Right. And that would have been the simple solution instead of coming up with this whole new tax that really burdened just one side of the transaction.
Yeah.
So I think it would have just much more equitable. And I think that's where our people down in Trenton messed up by not consulting with
your office is in the wrong place.
Yeah, I know. Well,
wrong place.
I don't want to be in Trenton. Not that there's anything wrong with Trenton, but
it's Brewed in Monmouth.
No, yeah, we like Shrewsbury, we like Eastern Monmouth. We like all of Monmouth, but
We do, and that's the whole point of this show, right?
Yeah.
We just love where we live. We love the people, the people who work here, the businesses, whether it's restaurants, lawyers, everybody in between. We just need houses to sell so we can get more of you to come here and, be part of this wonderful county.
Or swap.
It is.
New people don't have to come. Just swap. Upgrade.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah. I grew up down here. You?
Staten Island.
Staten Island.
Well.
Yeah.
Lakewood.
Wow. Yeah, it's a great county. It
is.
really, really is.
This whole area is a great place to grow up, great place to raise kids, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
I wouldn't either.
Yeah.
No, I just had the pleasure of sitting with friends on the beach this weekend, and it was literally like being on vacation.
Yeah.
It was just such a beautiful weekend, and we're just so lucky. It was just a car ride.
Yep.
It wasn't a plane ride.
No.
Yeah.
It's just a car ride.
And you can go home at the end of it.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for coming
Thank you
and
for having me.
helping
Appreciate
people,
it.
explain where it started, how it ended. And just, we'll muddle through. We'll do our best to make it work and make both sides happy and fair. Life is a burden, but we're blessed to have it. So you know what?
Having a good day?
It's just, it's a lot. So we just have to take it all in stride and
Exactly.
Oh, where's
figure
Beach
it all
Doreen?
out.
Beach Doreen. Go to the beach. Thanks so
do.
much,
Oh,
Andy.
thanks for
it was
having me.
great
I
to have
really
you.
appreciate you both.
All right.
thank you.